Good afternoon, gentlemen. We started with good morning, but I've been standing for 2 hours.
Good afternoon.
It's been said by some of the speakers that Amendment 3 grossly misrepresented what it was to the voters. Is that your opinion?
I think Amendment 3 opened a lot of doors to interpretation, and I think HJR 73 solves that problem.
Do you think voters knew what they were voting for when they voted in Amendment 3?
I think the voters had an idea of what they were voting for when they voted, absolutely, or they wouldn't have showed up at the polls.
And I think in your opening statements you mentioned how you were pro-life. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And you see this HJR as an effort or a resolution that if it was passed, adopted by the voters, it would lead to fewer abortions across the state of Missouri, right?
I would hope so, and the protection of women is paramount in this legislation.
Okay, and you think it would restrict both the number of abortions to minors as well as to people over the age of 18, right?
I think it would allow for parental consent for minors as well as allowing for the rape and incest exclusions.
As compared to now under Amendment 3 and then the future should this resolution become law, do you believe there would be fewer abortions performed on women who are above the age of 18?
It would be my hope, yes.
Okay. I'd like to look at what the voters will be facing. This is at the end of the joint resolution. This will be the language that's actually on the ballot when they go into the box. It says, shall the Missouri Constitution be amended to, and there are 6 bullet points. You can follow along if you'd like.
Yes.
Bullet point 1, guarantee access to care for medical emergencies, ectopic pregnancies, and miscarriages. Does anything in bullet point 1 suggest to a woman who is above the age of 18 that voting for this will restrict her ability to get an abortion in some circumstances?
No, I think it would allow for greater care for women and allow the doctors to actually do what their oath gives them to do. That is to protect and preserve life, and particularly women.
I'm sorry to cut you off a little bit, but there are
That's
other people who want to speak, and it's been over 2 hours already. The second bullet point, ensure women's safety during abortions. Does that tell someone who's voting that fewer adult women will be able to get an abortion if they choose to?
No, I think it's very clear that it ensures women's safety during abortions.
But it has nothing to do with their ability to access an abortion at all, right?
No, again,
okay.
I'm reading the
legislation. Bullet point 3, ensure parental consent for minors. Again, we're just talking, and this is my inquiry, we're just talking about women over the age of 18. So anything dealing with minors doesn't impact the right of a woman over the age of 18 to get an abortion. Is that right?
It doesn't say that here.
Okay. The fourth bullet point, allow abortions for medical emergencies, fetal abnormalities, rape, and incest. So nothing in that bullet point talks about when abortions are not allowed, right?
Well, I think it does. On page 3, would you like
No. But this is what the voters are going to see.
Would you allow me to respond to the inquiry?
I'm inquiring about what the voters will see when they go into the ballot.
I think you're making a statement rather than an inquiry.
What they're going to see are these 6 bullet points.
Sure.
And we're on bullet point number 5, and there's already no bullet point that tells a voter that there will be fewer abortions allowed for a woman who is at least 18 years old.
I think within the legislation, it provides for a definition of medical emergency. Would you like me to discuss that?
No, because the voter's not going to face that when they're in the ballot box.
They're not.
We're talking about voters who have been confused, to your side's point of view, confused as to Amendment 3. And I'm talking about what the voter will see when they go to the ballot box if we pass this.
I encourage every voter to go to house.mo.gov and look at the House Committee substitute for House Joint Resolution 73. I encourage all voters to vet the legislation that they're voting on and not to walk into the voting booth blindly. I encourage them to read this legislation. I encourage you to read this legislation.
To continue my inquiry, the 5th bullet point, require physicians to provide medically accurate information, does not tell a voter that they will not be able to access an abortion if they would like to access one, right?
Well, it says requires physician to provide medically accurate information.
And that doesn't tell a voter
that's important.
I'm not disagreeing that information is important. What I'm saying is
it
doesn't tell a voter they can't get an abortion.
No, it says require
Okay, and the last bullet point talks about protecting children from gender transition. That doesn't have anything to do with abortion, right?
No, it says protect children from gender transition. I think, again, it's very clear. This is simplified language that any of us, even a non-medical professor, professional, a non-attorney could actually go into the voting booth and agree with these statements. And the legislation is online. I'll put it on my Facebook post if you want the vast majority of Missourians to read it.
I don't disagree that a non-lawyer could read this and agree with it. That's my problem with it.
That a non-lawyer could read this and agree with it.
Because they wouldn't understand what's actually being passed, which is a restriction on abortion.
I think they do.
That's the whole point, is abortion. And I'm not seeing anything here that says an adult woman can't get an abortion except under certain limited circumstances that the law prescribes.
This legislation is available to every Missouri citizen, and I encourage them to read it.
Mr. Speaker, to speak on the bill.
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, we started early on and we talked about this being the people's house. People on both sides have testified today to this being the people's house. I want to provide due deference to the chaplain here. 1 Peter, servants, be subject to your masters. If this is the people's house, they are our masters, we are the servants. This erases what they have told us to do. Ephesians, servants, obey your earthly masters for fear and trembling as you would Christ. I didn't even want to bring up the last one, but the gentleman from Jefferson mentioned the Bible when he was speaking about this issue, and I thought we'd bring up Genesis right at the beginning. God breathed into the nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being at that point. I'm not here to debate the Bible, what the Bible tells us to do. I'm not here to debate our faith, but I am here saying that if the reason for this amendment is necessary is because the people were confused by Amendment 3, the language that they are going to see in the ballot has nothing to do with what you are trying to accomplish here. Thank you.